This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Breadcrumb Legacy is about being intentional in each moment. Every day is an opportunity to leave an impact, even if it's not immediately apparent. Small actions will accumulate into a legacy that others will remember. Valeria interviews Jan Eed. She is the author of Breadcrumb Legacy: How Great Leaders Live a Life Worth Remembering. Dr. Ruth is one of her sheroes. Dr. Ruth, sex therapist, professor, author, was talking about sex in the 80s, a taboo subject, when no one wanted to talk about it. Dr. Jann wants to talk about retirement when people don't want to talk about it and are scared to even think about it. At 94, Dr. Ruth is still writing and speaking, and Jann plans to do the same. As a former professor for decades, Dr. Jann decided to practice what she was teaching and preaching. She says she is out to retire the word retirement. We are not retiring from life, but moving on to something else. Jann believes it takes time and intentional thought to successfully move on to what's next in life. This awakening led her on a research journey that resulted in her book, Leading with Wisdom: Sage Advice from 100 Experts. One chapter that really resonated was Leaders Live Their Legacy. So Dr. Jann did a deep dive on legacy work and set out to interview gurus. From this work, she created the concept of Breadcrumb Legacy, and it became her latest book, Breadcrumb Legacy: How Great Leaders Live a Life Worth Remembering. Dr. Jann also hosts the Becoming a Sage podcast, where she interviews thought leaders on the wisdom of life and work. She also writes the Leading Edge column for Training magazine, which is published in print and online. Dr. Jann's mission is to be a seeker and learner who leaves a breadcrumb legacy for herself and others. She lives in Des Moines, Iowa, with her husband and her dog, Grover. She is proud of her 3 adult sons who are thriving in this ever-changing world. Meet Jan Eed at janfried.com. Here's the interview with Jan Eed.
In your own words, who is Jan Eed as of this moment?
I would say I'm an author, I'm a teacher, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, former professor, and I would say that learning is central to who I am. So I'm a seeker and I'm a learner.
I love that. What's not to love about being curious and always open to learn new things? When did you, I love your message. I said that off record. There are so many messages too. The one that really, everything resonated, everything that I have here. There's something that you say about living a legacy on a daily basis, living this meaningful life. So the question is, that seems to be a central message coming from you in the book, Breadcrumb Legacy: How Great Leaders Live a Life Worth Remembering. So my question is, when did you uncover that truth about yourself? Yeah, I would love to know the backstory.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Well, I had a previous book come out in 2013, and the title is Leading with Wisdom: Sage Advice from 100 Experts. Yeah. And I interviewed actually more than 100 of some of the top thought leaders in the field of leadership, and each theme then became a chapter in the book. And one chapter was called Leaders Live Their Legacy. Right. So when I would be doing talks or workshops on various aspects of that book, particularly Leaders Live Their Legacy, I would ask, when do we leave our legacy? And people would say, well, when we die, when we retire, when we leave the earth, leave a job. And I'd say,
Yes.
oh, yeah, that's true. All of that's very true. But I said, what happens when I leave this workshop, when I leave this talk, when I leave this room? You leave a meeting. We are leaving our legacy in bite-sized pieces every day. And so then I just coined this phrase, Breadcrumb Legacy, and I trademarked the term. And then I decided to do a deep dive into that topic. And then that's what became my latest book.
Wow. Yes. It just resonates so true to me. It's moment to moment. It's self-awareness, isn't it? Always going back to applying what we know. And that's one of the questions that I usually ask. Do you clearly see the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
I do. Sometimes I often say we're drowning in information, we're drowning in knowledge, but we're lacking in wisdom, starving for wisdom. And I think the difference is how you make it meaningful. What do you do with the information? What do you do with the knowledge? And how do you apply it to your life? And how do you make it meaningful? And I also think that wisdom is very hard to teach, but it can be shared. And so this whole idea of processing life wisdom, processing your life experience into wisdom, and then the legacy part comes in when you're sharing it with others. So how are you passing on that wisdom? Either to family members, to coworkers, to people you care about. How are you passing on that wisdom?
Yes, right. It could be the way you're doing with the work that you're doing, beautiful work that you're doing, the books and the workshops and the speaking engagements, and also living the message, being not just delivering the message, but being the living message. One of the things that I have been really has been a struggle for so long. I was always trying too hard to be kind, always be kind to others. And then I realized that kindness was not really taking me the place that I would like to be, which is a place of truth. So I had to combine kindness with truth. How can I express my truth, still being kind? And that doesn't really work all the time. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because that's one of the things that I know that kindness is so connected to wisdom. It's a beautiful skill, being patient, being kind, being loving. But then if we are not being truthful, it's just doesn't have the same impact. But then again, if we try to combine those two as well with people that are not ready for truth, then won't land well as well. So what is your suggestion in my case? It's something that I'm still working on, and it has been an interesting dance, fascinating one.
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And I often say honesty with kindness. As a former professor, students would often say, that, I deserved a better grade or something like that. And I'd say, you didn't give me a very good grade, or I didn't like the grade you give me. And I said, I don't give grades. Grades are earned. Yes. And so, you bring up a good point, because if we're not honest, we're really being unkind. So when it comes to like the workplace or even personal relationships, if we're not telling the truth, if we're not being truthful, we're being unkind. So honesty with kindness. How can you be honest, but deliver it with kindness? So the whole idea of truthfulness, if you're, especially in the workplace, if we're not giving honest feedback, we're not doing them a favor. Where someone's going to say, well, didn't you get feedback on this? So again, I think keeping in mind that honesty with kindness, that if we're not honest, we're really not being very kind.
Yes, thank you for saying that. It really, I needed to hear that. It seems like something that I have to be reminded all the time. that's okay to be truthful, but in a way that you're not really, the intention is not to hurt anyone, of course, but just,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, I mean, I can't help it, but just be like doing this. This is, it's so close to my heart, connecting deeply with other people, that I always wanted to do that and didn't know how. So this podcast has been amazing. All these beautiful people that I meet all the time, including yourself, Jan. Thank you for your
Well, and the
presence.
title of your podcast is
Yeah.
very reflective of what you're trying to do. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for seeing through that. So, and then going back, I had something to mention about the Leading with Wisdom book, Sage Advice from
Mm-hmm.
100 Experts. You said somewhere in your book, I found in your new book, Breadcrumb Legacy, you say, one of my main conclusions in Leading with Wisdom is that leadership development is really personal development. It is hard to be a good leader if you are not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
So that caught my attention immediately because of the concept of being a good person. How would you describe that?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. And again, I know we're not going to talk politics, but it is
Yes.
very hard to talk about this, write about it, think about it, and believe it, and then witness some other things.
Yeah, right.
So, a good person, to me, it has to do with it, like some of the things that you've mentioned already, but truth, integrity, honesty, empathy, compassion, caring about others. I'm very much a believer in servant leadership, which I define as leaders should clear obstacles. They shouldn't be the obstacle.
Right.
So this idea that, really leaders are there to help others do their job better, and really to stay out of the way. How can I clear the obstacles in someone's way? So to me, a good person is someone who you'd want to be around, and you might call in the middle of the night, somebody. I think trust has a lot to do with that. And it doesn't just happen naturally. These are all often earned qualities that we have to earn someone's trust or earn the right to feel like they will be a confidant, that kind of thing. So that's how I would define it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's very clear to me. A question that I used to ask, and perhaps I still ask these days to some people that I interview, is that a practice to become a good person, to live this meaningful life, to leave the legacy, as you call the breadcrumb legacy? Is that I mean, from your perspective, of course, it is a practice, but I'm wondering if there is a component to it that it's natural, that it's that just flows from us, that we don't have to work so hard on.
Right. I think that what immediately comes to my mind is when I was teaching leadership, we would talk about, are leaders born or made?
Right.
And I think some people have some natural characteristics that come more easily. Right. But my conclusion was always that leaders can be made. And that's where we come with emotional intelligence, that the difference between EQ, emotional quotient, and IQ, intelligence, is that IQ is something that we're often born with, and EQ is something that we can get better at, emotional intelligence. And so I think we can learn, because we're not perfect people. We are imperfect beings. And that's where I think in both of my books, I talk about compassion, empathy, forgiveness, that, we're not perfect. And so learning how to ask for forgiveness, learning how to deal with conflict, learning how to give advice that's helpful and not hurtful, is really important.
Yes, you answered my question again. In your book, I read a passage where you talk about purpose. Yeah, purpose is a big one, having this sense of purpose. And then you talk about the difference between a gift, gifts, passions, and values. That it's a very interesting idea. So you describe them differently. So would you say that values are close to belief systems, Jen, in this sense, in this way?
yes, just like organizations will have a mission statement, a vision statement, and then they'll have, or sometimes they call it a purpose statement, and then they'll have a set of values. It's those things that are really, really important to you that you really don't want to violate. And sometimes we look at values as the foundation of everything else. So, for me, and I used to say this when I was a full-time college professor, I'd say, I really value fairness. It's really important to me as a professor to be fair.
Right.
And so I strive very hard to be fair, and it's not easy, because fairness, has to do with equity, and, I want to be very fair. And so I think, integrity is also important to me. So what are those values that truly, you would not want to violate, or you would not want to have them violated in a relationship, or, by an employee or by a friend. So, I think they're kind of the foundation that then that you build everything else on.
Right. So values. And it's not really connected to the concept of beliefs, right? Of having a belief system that's separate from, it seems to me.
I think they're separate, but I think your belief system is often, it builds on your values. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And what would you say the gifts, the natural talents we have, are we born with them?
I would say that those are, we're born with some, we can learn others, but I think the ones that we're born with are more natural, and they're more fun, and they flow easy, they flow easier. They're easier for us. And I think what happens is, as we mature in life and we get so focused on our career, that we often forget about what are those gifts that really bring us joy. That we really enjoy doing. And I try to remind people of those gifts as they're thinking about retiring or leaving their career. And a lot of people struggle. That's kind of my passion right now, is coaching people in the second half of life or after their main career. Right. And so I remind people, what are those? Because people struggle with, what am I going to do with my time? What do I want to do with my energy? And I say, well, what are your gifts? How do you want to continue to contribute to the world?
Yes, what a beautiful question. Yes, the title of this episode is Retiring the Word Retirement.
Yes.
I was laughing at that because it's a fun one, even to think about it as a concept. It's a lot of fun. Not ending what gives us joy, not stop doing what makes our heart sing. That's something that you mentioned too. Why would we anyway? Age should not be an obstacle to that. So that's really, really beautiful. And let me ask you this question, since we're talking about aging. So how do you see what is your, let's say, how do you dance with this, with aging? When did you start really thinking about it? And yes, I'd love to hear from you. What is your thoughts on that, on aging in general?
In both of my last two books, I kind of described the story, but I'll just condense it here. So I had a professional mentor, and his name was Dr. Elmer Burak, and he was at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And when I met him, he was the director of the PhD program there, and he became a mentor to me over the years. And he sent me this book in about 2004. And the book is called From Aging to Saging, A Revolutionary Approach to Growing Older, something like that. But if you just remember From Aging to Saging, you can Google that. And it's really like the Bible to the organization called Saging International. And I'm involved with Saging International, and the website is saging, SAGE-ING.org. And Saging International is really all about consciously aging, positively aging. And it's been around for quite a while, and it's all based on this book, From Aging to Saging. Now, new people are getting in this space. Chip Conley is very well known as the co-founder of the Modern Elder Academy, which is known as MEA, and I've attended that, and I'm part of that. And they have, he calls it the first academy for midlife. I think that's what he says, Academy for Midlife. And they have campuses in Baja, Mexico, and in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I've been to Baja, and I'm going to Santa Fe in October. But so I got very involved with this whole idea of saging, which is positive aging. And and I've been immersed in this ever since. And so that's really kind of how it became. And so it's all about kind of becoming more, as Chip Conley says, become more useful instead of youthful. Don't just focus on, being, I wish I were younger, youth, but how can I be useful? And I love that kind of terminology. And that's why I kind of use the term, how do you want to continue to contribute to the world? Because we may not be working full time. We may be, have left our main career, but we still have a lot of time, energy, resources, and gifts that we can use to contribute in different ways. And elders or sages often have more time and more freedom and flexibility over how they use that time. And so we need to really be focused on how can we leave the world a better place.
Wow.
What
a beautiful message.
Yeah. Right. For our kids and grandkids.
Yes. 1 billion times to that. And the interesting thing is that we have known from ancient civilizations that there has been very well, let's say, developed there, wisdom. As you age, you become wiser, and so you have even more impact in the community, in society. Everybody comes to you because you know more than I do, and it's just beautiful. This the way they used to live.
Exactly, and I think other cultures do it better. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico. In fact, I wrote a book called. It's called Women of Yucatan, 30 Who Dare to Change Their World. And it's really about women leaders in the state of Yucatan, Mexico. But I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, and, the norm is not to, have your parents or grandparents go to a nursing home or a retirement village. They move in. They will move in and you take care of them. And, there's something beautiful about, having more extended family under one roof. And I love that. In other cultures, that I have not experienced, but I've read about, again, they really respect their elders. Yes. And it seems like in our United States culture, it's very youth centric, and it's, you hear this all the time from actors and actresses who say, I can't get any parts after age 40, or, or I've got to have major, we as a society like to focus on the external body, whether it's Botox or facelifts or whatever, instead of the internal body, which has to do with, what are we thinking? How are we feeling? Are we processing our life experience into wisdom? So that's how I feel about it.
Yes, it is so true. It's clear. I was just thinking about Brazil, if they are like that there. Yeah, I see that they hold this value of respecting the older people, bringing them together. That happens there too. So what happened in the United States? What do you feel went wrong, per se?
I don't know. I really, I don't know when this all started. Again, we tend to focus on anti-aging instead of embracing aging. And, it should be something that we celebrate. Like, I really believe in celebrating birthdays. And I don't believe in some of these over the hill or, I don't like those themes. I think in fact, one of the themes that I often say is, don't count the candles on the cake, but count the glow the candles make.
I love that.
So, I don't like this over the hill, or, I don't, and I actually don't like some of the, what I would call offensive or negative retirement cards.
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes.
So,
Good for you, Jen.
mhm.
Yes. I'm listening. I'm 47, so I'm listening. The body's starting
Yes,
to change and
yes,
all that. It has been fascinating. I actually,
yes.
I embrace it all. I for some reason, very curious about, the evolution of the body and the mind,
Mhm.
evolution in general. I'm just very fascinated, interested in. So, yes, physical and non-physical, both. And
Right.
speaking of non-physical, you just mentioned the inner world, the emotions, feelings. Do
Mhm.
you have any spiritual views of the world and yourself or practices?
Yes. Well, in terms of traditional practices, I grew up Lutheran and now I'm Presbyterian,
Yeah.
but I definitely am all for diversity, and I'm very inclusive, and I believe that all people have value, and um, I believe that everybody should love whoever they love. And, again, it kind of goes back to that idea of kindness and
Mm,
embrace everyone. Um, I don't like things that are exclusionary,
yeah.
um, because I really focus on inclusion,
Yeah.
not exclusion. In terms of spiritual practice, I have a spiritual director who I meet with monthly.
Mm, yeah.
Saging actually is a spiritual
Um,
philosophy.
sounds like
So
it.
it's
Yeah.
not a religious philosophy, but it's a
Yes.
spiritual philosophy in terms
Right.
of, um, really believing that we're all connected, and
Yeah.
um, yeah. So,
Yes, yeah, that's exactly how I see reality.
mhm.
Everything, the interconnectedness of everything, and then has this not just a spiritual thing. It's actually science these days, right? When you go really research all the latest studies, especially in quantum physics and all, you see that of very often you see that being said, oh, everything's interconnected. Oh, they show actually nature, how one thing depends on the other, and how everything impacts everything else. So,
Right.
and then we see that clearly with your work too, and so many amazing people doing this work of leaving a legacy, of helping others, of being out there doing something to make the world a better place. It's so clear to me. That's
Right.
naturally, that's what it is. Intuitively, we know that everything
Right.
is connected.
Well, and
Um,
I don't understand the pushback on science. I mean, why would we not believe science? You know?
yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, of course. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love you see, spirituality, practicality,
Mhm.
spirituality and science, of course. Yeah.
Mhm.
No division. And I love that though. This book, I never heard about it. I will look for it, From Aging to
Mhm.
Saging. It
Mhm.
it came to mind immediately because I'm a student of Vedanta. That's a Hindu philosophy of knowledge based on the
Mhm.
Upanishads. It's very old, ancient wisdom there. So I remember one of the monks saying, he's a Swami really. He said, "When I close my eyes, I am at peace, and when I open my eyes, how can I help?"
Oh, I like that. I like
Right?
that.
So beautiful. It's exactly what you're saying, with just with different words. But yeah,
Mhm.
the
I like
idea of
that a
having,
lot.
isn't it beautiful? The idea
Mhm.
of having purpose. How can I help? How can I be
Mhm.
useful? You said, instead of
Yes.
being useful and not being. What's the other word you used
Well,
earlier?
I said instead of focusing on being youthful,
Youthful. Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
be useful. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I love that too. I just wrote it down here, but for some
Mhm.
reason, I wrote it down useful twice. Youthful, yeah.
Yeah.
The coming from the word young.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Another thing that caught my attention. So many things. I love your work, though. There's so much
Thank you
wisdom
very
there.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
It's almost like there's a guide, of wisdom. so many things. There's something else that you mentioned. You quoted the social psychologist Jennifer Aker, her name is, if I can pronounce that correctly. So she kind of pointed out the difference between a happy life and a meaningful life. And that was interesting to see, where she says, you quoted her saying, happiness feels good. Happiness is about receiving. Happiness is self-focused, anchored on others, and happiness is fleeting. And then while meaningfulness doesn't always feel good, which is so true, it's about giving. Its meaningfulness feels bigger than yourself. And then also it's more lasting, and it's able to bridge the past, present, and future. I mean, what a beautiful observation, because it feels very true to me. And it's wonderful to see people to put these ideas, concepts in words, in language. You're like, how you're reading my mind, you're reading my heart. How could this happen? Beautiful.
Well, one thing, I'm not really fond of the word happy or the concept, because as you said, happiness is fleeting. So much of life is not about being happy. I prefer the word content or fulfillment, because some things, it's just like when, Csikszentmihalyi, the concept of flow. Csikszentmihalyi. Anyway, his concept of flow is that we're often in the flow when we're really challenged, when we're intellectually pushed, when we're physically pushed. And that doesn't mean we're happy, but it just means that we're really striving for something. So, think about somebody who just finished a marathon, or somebody who just climbed, mountain climber and just climbed the mountain. They may not look happy, but they look fulfilled, like they really accomplished something. And I think, I'm trying to think of the woman with the Happiness Project, Gretchen Rubin, I think. Again, I think instead of, the pursuit of happiness, instead of chasing happiness, I think it's more important to think about what's really going to fulfill me, what's going to make me really feel like I accomplished something. And even if you have children, it's not all about happiness, but it's about, helping them grow and make their best decisions, and, mentoring them and taking care of them. And it's not all about happiness. So anyway, that's probably more than you want to know. But I do think there's a difference between, when we're really happy or when we're really feeling contented.
Yes. That's a beautiful observation that I absolutely agree with. Yes. And also the idea of happiness has been associated with pleasure. So I've seen that happens, and more often than not, that leads to addiction and all kinds of problems.
That's true.
Yes. And I usually, for some reason, the word that came to me as an insight was joy, because that arises exactly from that place of deeper insights. So every time I'm present, I'm doing something that my heart is open to and it's fulfilled by, then joy arises. It's not something that I'm trying to achieve. So it's not really in a place to stay. It comes to visit. That's what it feels like.
Oh, I like that. That.
It depends on our state of mind, state of being, then peace and joy arise. As you said, almost like something that you earn. It's not something that we pursue.
Okay.
And you okay, Jen? Okay.
Yeah.
And there's something else that caught my attention in your bio. So you mentioned Ruth Westheimer. Is that how you pronounce your last name? Yeah, so I'd never heard about her. But then by being in touch with you, I had to kind of go on YouTube and research her and see. Okay. I was amazed by her work. She did so much. And I know she died at 96, and she was very much.
She just died.
Oh, she just died.
She just died, like within the week.
I didn't know that. Well, I just found out too in the New York Times. I think I read that.
Yes.
So how did you?
Dr. Ruth. She was known as Dr. Ruth.
Dr. Ruth, right.
Mm-hmm,
So talk
mm-hmm.
to me a bit, for those who don't know, like I did know,
Yeah. Okay.
who was she and why are you so inspired by her?
Well, first of all, I'm inspired because at 96, she was still writing, speaking, being consulted. I mean, she was still very engaged, active, and relevant. Okay.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
she was known as, so she was a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
At age 10, her parents were able to get her to Switzerland, and she never saw her parents again. So she believes that they were killed in the Holocaust. And so at age 10, she was taken in by others and really, one way or another, put herself through school, had to learn English, kept going to school. And so very well educated, very smart. And in the 80s, she was very popular on the speaking tour. She was about 4 feet tall, very short. I had the chance to meet her twice. And she was really known as kind of a sex therapist. So she was out talking about sex when it was really taboo. People are not, and she would talk about it in very direct, frank, but then kind of funny ways. So kind of your honesty with kindness, but kind of funny. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And so one thing that I say is she was talking about sex when it was a taboo subject. Well, I'm talking about retirement when a lot of people still don't want it. I mean, it's one thing to say when you're 30 or 40, you say, oh, I can't wait for retirement, or I can't wait until I retire. But the closer you get to retirement, the less you want to talk about it, the less you want to kind of think about it. And if you're still working, I've had people say to me, I don't even want to mention it in the workplace because I'll be replaced immediately, or that will plant a seed and people want to get rid of me and I'm not ready to go. And I don't have a plan. And so, I kind of make that analogy or that comparison, I guess, that she was talking about a subject that was taboo, and I'm talking about a subject that is often taboo. Like I've had people say to me, I better not mention this because they'll find a way to get rid of me and I'm not ready, but she was just very charismatic. She had a radio show. At one time I wanted a radio show. Now people are not really doing radios. They're doing podcasts, and I have a podcast myself. So, but I think it was the idea that, she was just so, pleasant. She was just such a pleasant person. And like I said, at 96, she was still writing, speaking, being sought after as a consultant. I mean, people were still seeking out her wisdom.
Yes, that was really everything you're saying just was in front of me by listening to her and reading about her. Yes, I love the element of humor, her sense of humor. That's something that's very much associated again with wisdom. If you're able to just take life lightly, I think that in a more playful way. She did that really well. And some people, go extremes, comedians, but then they are not really. It's a bit different, but they are actually sometimes they are not as wise, but I love when I see people doing kind of combining all of this and all those components of wisdom, being kind, truthful, and funny.
Yeah.
I mean, what a beautiful recipe.
Yeah, humor is healthy.
Yes.
A sense of humor is healthy.
Yes. Yeah. I saw that in her right away. So, thank you for bringing her to my attention. I didn't know about her for some reason. So I want to mention again so in your book, the concepts in your book, the wonderful concepts there. So Breadcrumb Legacy, the concept of having a purpose, that's very much explored, having a growth mindset, cultivating, nurturing, and sustaining relationships, embracing death, becoming a nobody, sharing wisdom. So these the idea of purpose that was like a given. We had to talk about it, but then also something else that might be a taboo, as you mentioned, is death. Right? No one wants to talk about death. I love talking about death for some reason, since I was much younger. So talk to me about that. I love the way you said, there's something that you said that it made me laugh because you said, learning about death, dying, grief, and grieving has changed my life. I think about death all of the time. I plan and revise my funeral in ways other people plan weddings and parties. So that sound, I mean, it doesn't sound morbid to me. It sounds fun. You embracing all aspects of life, all parts of life, not just being healthy and young, and you just embracing everything as a whole, just being whole. There's wisdom and beauty in that. So talk to me about the fear of death. I guess I'm very interested in that. So many people, they embrace death as a concept as, okay, we're all going to die anyway. But the fear of death can prevent us from living that meaningful life that you speak of. So how are you dancing that dance right now in your life?
Yeah. Well, for your listeners, I did do a TEDx talk called Embracing Death, Seeing Life Through a Different Lens. And so they could look that up on YouTube if they're interested. But, to me, it really is it's just a reminder that, first of all, life can end at any time.
Right.
And so, oftentimes people think of legacy at the end of life. Well, the catch is we don't know when the end is.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I'm trying to advocate, or I am advocating, that we think about legacy on a daily basis because we don't know when the end is.
Yes.
And so embracing this whole idea of death, one book that I would use in my leadership courses is Tuesdays with Morrie. And you may not know about it. It was a classic book when it came out, written by Mitch Albom. He's written many other books since then, but this is definitely my favorite because it's based on a true story. He found out that his favorite college professor had ALS. And so he goes to visit him, and he was so intrigued by talking with him because the author, Mitch Albom, I think he still writes for the Detroit Press, but now he's a pretty prominent author. When he was so intrigued when he went to visit his professor Morrie that he said, okay, I'm going to come back every Tuesday and we're just going to talk. And so when he would go back every Tuesday, he made a list of topics that he wanted to talk about: money, love. I mean, basically, these are all topics about life.
Yeah.
So let's talk about money. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about death. Let's talk about friendships or relationships. These are all, let's talk about work. And then he ended up writing this book called Tuesdays with Morrie. And so again, it's one of these, so I would have students who are studying leadership read this book. And it's just all about life wisdom because, work is just a part of what we do.
Right.
But if you go back to my conclusion that it's hard to be a good leader if you're not a good person, what makes a good person? Well, compassion, empathy, understanding, wisdom, how to be kind, how to give feedback with kindness. So it's all interrelated. And as I say in the book, that my students started calling me Dr. Death because I talk about it all the time.
Yes.
But it's a way to remind people about life,
Yes. You see, that's such an insightful topic to contemplate, to reflect on. Has to do with endings, right? Letting go. There's so much. I think the word that comes to mind is grace when I think about just peacefully letting something go that's not meant for you. I love that. And I've been living this way for a while now, just letting go of people, relationships, things, whatever it is it's so clear that was not meant for me because the conflicts, it's not a good match. So that, I love you doing this because we need that. We need to be reminded that death, the end, it's part of life. So embracing life as a whole, it has to include death and everything else that you spoke of, money and all those things. So that's one of the things that I'm very much spiritually inclined. I have this tendency to see everything through the spiritual lens. And sometimes I become very abstract, a little bit far from, let's say, the reality that most people live in. The physical reality and all this. And I try to be as practical as I can too, so I could kind of to bridge, that gap. But there are some things that I can't really compromise with. And then I just leave it at that. I prefer not to have those conversations in that case when going deeper into the spiritual concepts that I have learned. But with that aside, I wanted to mention, the TEDx talk. I'll have the link on this podcast interview so people can access. Okay. But there's another, that was 2021. I have there in front of me. Des Moines. And then there's another one, and that was Bergen Community College, I believe, in New Jersey, that was Becoming a Nobody. That one caught my attention too, because it's highly spiritual. So I would have this whole conversation about that, but then I said, no, I can't do that to her. So let's talk about this in the end. That was a documentary. I think there was a film with Ramdas. I remember I used to watch them.
Exactly. Right, yes. Exactly. He coined that phrase. And basically, one of the things that's hard to let go of is our ego.
Yes.
And so much of life, we spend energy and education and all of our resources trying to become a somebody.
Yes.
But what's hard about letting go of our work is our work oftentimes is our identity, which identity is closely tied to ego.
Yes.
So what Ram Dass was saying is, as we need to learn to gracefully become a nobody, which means to let go of those things that were so important to us, that really, in the end, are not that critical to what really matters in life. And so, but it takes work. It takes work to go from being a somebody to becoming a nobody. But what I concluded at the end of my talk was that maybe becoming a nobody is really becoming somebody special.
Yes. There'll be the evolution of what is to be a human being, right? That will be the next stage of what that is.
It's really a metamorphosis, really, if you think about it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, beautifully said. Yes. So I won't get into it. I know there's a lot of, we're almost at the end, and I have so many questions and comments here on chapter 4 in your book, that's Becoming a Nobody, and the two sides of the ego. And then you talk about how the ego wants to protect us, but then there's the healthy ego too. But what you just said, that's really summarized everything, right? I translate into the evolution of what it means to be a human being, because it seems like we have lost the way there. Although I think all path is really leading us to truth. That's what I'm interested in. And I think Ramdas said something like that too. He said, we all walk in each other home, something like that, beautifully.
He did. Yes. I think that was his last book.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Oh, so he was amazing too, Jan, because he used to use a lot of sense of humor. He was so funny naturally, I guess, the way he spoke about it. He was so honest about, his egoic side, that it was funny. And I guess because we probably related to it. And it's like, how can somebody just expose the ego the way he does? And another thing that caught my attention, before we say goodbye for today, I have to mention this, is something that you talked, chapter 6, who will help you move the couch? That was about relationships. And you talked about loneliness is killing us. That was, I think it was one of the passages. And then you say there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. So talk to me about that specific idea.
This is a topic that I'm really passionate about right now. And there's a lot of research being done about social wellness, social connection, loneliness, and how important it is to feel connected. And, I often say you can be in a crowd and feel alone.
Yes.
And you can be alone and not be lonely. And so there's a difference between being lonely. I think the difference is when you are feeling lonely, you're feeling excluded. Okay.
Yes.
For some reason, you're feeling, excluded.
Yes.
But when you're alone, it could be solitude, that you're alone, but you're not feeling excluded. So I think that's where I'm trying to make that differentiation, that, again, you can be in a crowd and you can feel very lonely because you don't feel a part of it or you don't feel connected, where you could be all by yourself and feel connected. You could feel connected. Yeah.
Yes. It sounds to me like, it feels to me, let me see if that resonates with you. So being alone, to me, feels like I'm making that choice.
That's
like
right.
I choose to be alone.
Yes.
And feeling lonely, somebody else made that choice for me. Like in the sense, feeling excluded. Right.
Excellent. Excellent. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
it felt that way. As you were explaining, like, oh, wait a minute, that's how I feel. That's how I have felt. These days I don't feel lonely anymore, but I used to. So yes. And I remember interviewing somebody recently. She's a psychologist, and she said that. She said exactly that. I used to feel so lonely. And that's why today I really value being around people. I love people and I feel included. And I remember crying when I heard that. It made me emotional. I think something in me really related to what she said. Anyway, so, oh my God, Jan, what's not to love about what you're doing in your messages?
Thank you very much.
They're so powerful. Thank you so much again. And let's see, in the end, I want to mention this. There's something that I wrote it down here about the legacy. Where is it? God, I made too many notes. I love the exercise. You have so many exercises too throughout the book. The box of unlived life. That was an insightful one too. Gosh, there's so much to learn. But you say the Breadcrumb Legacy is about being intentional in each moment. Every day is an opportunity to leave an impact. Even if it is not immediately apparent, small actions will accumulate into a legacy that others will remember. So everything about your work, it is just smells like wisdom. So thank you for that flavor, that perfume. Beautiful. And before we say goodbye, did you leave anything unsaid for today's conversation, Jan? Is anything else?
I don't think so. You certainly did your homework. You did your research, and I thought your questions were excellent. So thank you.
Thank you for your presence, for saying yes to this. And I want to mention the website, janfried.com. And I have the 2 TEDx talk will be here. I'll have that clickable on the episode notes. Anything else? I know you are on LinkedIn, so I have that here too. Instagram as well, YouTube. Wonderful. And my last question for you will be this one, if you don't mind. What is your idea of freedom? What is to be free to you?
Oh, it's a great idea. I think freedom is for me, it's when I make decisions about how I'm spending my resources, whether that's time, energy, money. When I get to make those choices, that seems like freedom.
Yes. Knowing that you have made healthy choices. Yeah, that it feels that way too. I have a different idea for freedom, but it's all in that same beautiful package of living the meaningful life. It really goes back to that. Thank you so much again for your presence, and we'll be in touch again. Take good care of your beautiful self, Jan. Bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Jan E. Fried and her work, please visit janfried.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.